The world is loud, chaotic, distracted. Everywhere you look, people are chasing approval, drowning in noise, and forgetting who they are. But over a century ago, one man saw it coming. A thinker who peered into the deepest layers of the human mind and found the patterns that still control us today. His name was Carl Gustav Jung, psychiatrist, philosopher, and pioneer of depth psychology. He believed that the greatest battles we fight are not out there in the world, but in here, within ourselves. Carl Jung was more than a psychologist. He was a visionary who looked deep into the human mind and found truths that still shape how we see ourselves today. He explored the shadows we hide, the archetypes we live by, and the unconscious patterns that steer our lives without us even realizing it. His work wasn't just theory. It was a map for living with depth, clarity, and authenticity. In this video, we've brought together some of Jung's most powerful ideas and applied them to the challenges we face today. We begin with why the world is getting stupider, the stupidity pandemic, where Jung's insights reveal how collective thinking can lead entire societies into intellectual decline and how to avoid getting pulled into the tide. Next, when you stop being available, everything changes, shows how setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's essential for self-respect, personal power, and protecting your energy. Then, in A Guide to Stop Wasting Your Life, we explore Jung's path to becoming your true self, a life led not by other people's expectations, but by the inner voice that knows who you really are. From there, The 6 Dangerous People Carl Jung Says You Must Avoid exposes the toxic personality types that drain your spirit, cloud your judgment and sabotage your growth, and how to recognize them before they pull you down. Finally, Nothing and Nobody Will Ever Hurt You Again shows how Jung's teachings can give you an inner resilience so strong, outside forces lose their power over you. Together, these lessons form a complete journey through Carl Jung's wisdom, a toolkit for thinking deeply, living intentionally, and protecting your mind in a chaotic world. So sit back, open your mind, and let's explore the timeless psychology of Carl Jung. Carl Jung's wisdom won't just change the way you think. It will change the way you live. You've probably seen it before. Someone passionately defending a politician who's clearly lying, or a celebrity doing something ridiculously foolish and still getting praised for it. Maybe you've watched people jump on baffling trends or scream in outrage over things they barely understand. And you can't help but wonder, how? How can someone be so confident and yet so completely wrong? Why do so many people proudly stand behind ideas that seem obviously ridiculous? The answer isn't simple. There's something deeper going on. In recent years, a strange and unsettling shift has been quietly unfolding, one that feels more like the plot of a dystopian novel than real life. It's the slow death of critical thinking. Our raw intelligence isn't necessarily fading, but something more important is slipping away. Our ability to think clearly, reason logically, and stay intellectually humble. What some are calling a stupidity epidemic isn't about people suddenly becoming less smart. It's far more insidious. It's a slow erosion, and it's led us to a world where misinformation spreads faster than truth, and outrage often drowns out reason. So, how did we get here? Why is this happening? And what's fueling this rise in intellectual laziness? Let's break it down, one reason at a time. Blind tribalism. Tribal outrage gives us something we all crave, a role to play, an enemy to fight, a sense of belonging. Humans have always been tribal. Long before modern life, survival meant sticking with your group. And while we've evolved in countless ways, that deep instinct to split the world into us and them is still very much alive in us today. This is what psychologists refer to as social identity theory, the idea that a big part of our self-worth comes from the groups we identify with. When our group is praised, we feel proud. When it's criticized, we take it personally. So we don't just disagree with other viewpoints, we see them as threats to who we are. And that's where the decline begins. The more uncertain or anxious we feel, the more tribal we become. In moments of fear or confusion, our minds seek clarity, and tribalism offers it in its simplest form: us versus them, right versus wrong, safe versus dangerous. It's emotionally satisfying. It frees us from the hard, messy work of actual thinking. Instead of chasing the truth, we chase validation. We stop asking, "Is this true?" and start asking, "Does this make me feel like I belong?" And today, tribalism goes way beyond politics or religion. It's become tied to our very identity. People define who they are by defining who they're against. And once you've pledged allegiance to a group, questioning its beliefs feels like betrayal. Thinking for yourself becomes a kind of treason. That's why people cling to the most absurd ideas, even when those ideas are obviously false. Because the truth is hard. It requires thought, self-reflection, and often discomfort. Anger, on the other hand, is easy. And when that anger is shared by your group, it doesn't just feel easy, it feels righteous. Even if everything you're shouting is completely wrong, you can see this dynamic in George Orwell's 1984. Every day, citizens take part in a ritual called the 2 minutes hate, where they scream in unison at the enemies of the state and praise Big Brother. There's no thought, no reflection, just a mass of people shouting the same slogans, thinking the same thoughts. Because any deviation is dangerous, the tribe must be preserved, even if that means embracing lies. And this, at its core, is the heart of the stupidity epidemic, the death of independent thought in exchange for collective affirmation. It's the unwillingness, or sometimes the inability, to challenge the group, to think critically, to question popular delusions. We've stopped thinking for ourselves. We've chosen belonging over truth, and the cost is staggering. Digital echo chambers and engineered distraction. We like to think of ourselves as rational beings who sometimes feel, but in reality, we're the opposite. We're feeling machines that happen to think, and that's exactly what today's tech platforms have learned to exploit. These platforms aren't just neutral tools for sharing information. Sure, they've brought a lot of good, but they've also become powerful engines of manipulation, designed not to inform, but to engage. At any cost, they don't reward truth or nuance. They reward what grabs attention. And the things that grab attention? Outrage, sensationalism, echoes of our own beliefs. It's not thoughtful debate that gets shared. It's whatever makes people feel something fast. Not curiosity, but confirmation bias. And so, little by little, these platforms have turned into factories of intellectual decay. They're built to keep us scrolling. Every click, like, and swipe teaches the algorithm what makes our brain light up, and it feeds us more of the same. Again and again, slowly, your digital world becomes a hall of mirrors. You're not seeing reality. You're seeing your own beliefs reflected back at you. It's like that quote, "When everyone is thinking the same, no one is really thinking at all." And in this kind of environment, stupidity doesn't just survive, it thrives. Not because we can't think, but because we're no longer being asked to. These platforms reward emotional simplicity over intellectual depth. They don't challenge us with complex ideas. They give us memes, outrage clips, and tribal sound bites. And we keep coming back for more. Psychologists call this confirmation bias, the tendency to seek out and believe information that supports what we already think. These systems are designed to exploit that flaw. They don't push us to grow. They just make us feel safe in what we already believe. And the result, we get intellectually stuck. This isn't just a theory. It's something we were warned about. Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451 imagined a future where books were banned, not just by force, but by choice. People stopped reading, not because they had to, but because they preferred easy, shallow entertainment. Giant wall screens filled their homes, and deep thinking quietly died out. As Bradbury put it, you don't have to burn books to destroy a culture. Just get people to stop reading them. And that's exactly what's happening now. We're not burning books. We're just ignoring them. We've traded curiosity for comfort. We recognize memes faster than we finish a single news article. We scroll endlessly but rarely sit with difficult ideas. AI doesn't have to destroy human intelligence. It just has to distract us long enough for us to stop using it. Think about how often we outsource thinking now. Even simple things. When we drive, we follow GPS, sometimes on routes we've taken dozens of times. I've done it. Followed directions so automatically that I arrived somewhere without even knowing how I got there. Ask me to retrace the route without Google or ChatGPT, and I'm lost. It's like we're no longer navigating the world. We're being navigated through it. In this world, stupidity isn't just an accident. It's a feature. And there's still one more major force feeding this epidemic of ignorance. In our hyper-connected digital world, where every voice has a platform and every opinion can go viral, a strange and unsettling pattern has emerged. The loudest voices are often the least informed and the most confident. This paradox is explained by a psychological bias known as the Dunning-Kruger effect, named after researchers David Dunning and Justin Kruger. In essence, it reveals that people with low competence in a subject tend to dramatically overestimate their abilities. Why? Because they lack the very knowledge needed to recognize their own ignorance. They quite literally don't know what they don't know. This might seem like a minor psychological quirk, but in today's world, it has serious consequences. Before the internet, if someone was misinformed, their influence was limited to their immediate circle. Now, with a few taps, someone with zero expertise can share their half-baked opinions with millions. And the more confident or outrageous they sound, the more attention they get. Meanwhile, real experts who speak with nuance, caution, and humility are often drowned out by the noise. It creates a terrifying inversion of credibility. The less you know, the louder you speak, and the louder you speak, the more influence you gain. This is especially dangerous on social media, where platforms reward confidence, not competence. They don't care if your opinion is accurate, they care if it's engaging. So what spreads? Uninformed certainty. What gets ignored? Careful, informed thought. This cognitive bias fuels a much larger problem: the normalization of misinformation. The goal of modern propaganda isn't just to mislead, it's to exhaust your critical thinking, to slowly erase your sense of what's true. In today's digital landscape, the line between truth and falsehood isn't just blurry, it's under assault. We're not just dealing with ignorance anymore. We're facing a systemic flood of misinformation, where lies are repeated so often, so confidently, and so emotionally, that they begin to feel true. And this isn't accidental. The systems we use every day, our news feeds, our timelines, our For You pages, reward emotional outrage over thoughtful analysis. They reward sensationalism, not accuracy. It's no wonder then that in a culture addicted to speed, simplicity, and instant gratification, thoughtful and nuanced perspectives get lost. Or worse, ignored. The consequences? They're real and deadly. Take the anti-vaccine movement. Despite overwhelming scientific consensus on the safety and importance of vaccines, misinformation campaigns have convinced millions to distrust them. This isn't just a fringe belief anymore. Diseases like measles, once eradicated, have made a disturbing comeback. Not because the science changed, but because people stopped listening to it. And that's just one example. Misinformation corrodes more than just public health. It undermines trust in institutions. It deepens political divides. It makes it harder, sometimes impossible, for societies to solve collective problems. As people retreat into ideological echo chambers, shared dialogue disappears. The willingness to change one's mind, once a mark of intellectual strength, becomes rare, even dangerous. Facts are no longer neutral. They're seen as weapons in a political war. As media scholar Gabriella Cosentino put it, we are entering a post-truth era, where truth is no longer defined by evidence, but by emotion. If something feels true, that's enough. Reality becomes optional. And when the loudest, most confident voices are the ones most rewarded, critical thinking atrophies. People become more vulnerable to scams, to dangerous ideologies, to groupthink. And as a result, society starts making short-sighted, foolish decisions. It's like tulip mania in the 17th century, when people spent fortunes on flower bulbs. But today our delusions are on steroids, amplified and accelerated by technology. This is all part of what we might call the decay of our cognitive immune system. Just as our bodies weaken when exposed to viruses, our minds weaken under constant exposure to junk information. We stop filtering, we stop questioning, we stop thinking. And when that happens, stupidity stops being an individual failing, it becomes a systemic threat. The German theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer saw this long before the digital age. While resisting the Nazi regime in the 1940s, he wrote that stupidity is more dangerous than evil. And he was right. If you haven't seen my full video on Bonhoeffer's insight and how to protect your mind from this kind of societal decay, I highly recommend it. The link is in the description and at the end of this video. Have you ever noticed how some people seem to have an almost supernatural ability to influence the environment around them without saying a word? They don't shout, they don't plead, they simply withdraw, and suddenly everything changes. The energy shifts. People start questioning, chasing, and feeling. Now imagine if you did the same. What if you stopped reacting immediately to everything? What if you chose silence over automatic responses, retreat over explosion? What do you think would happen? That's the heart of the matter. When you stop being constantly available, emotionally, physically, and psychologically, the world around you is thrown into confusion. People are used to controlling you through your reactions, your impulses, and your predictability. But the moment you step back, everything shifts. And those who thought they knew you begin to realize they don't know you at all. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to a better understanding of ourselves." So think about this. When you become inaccessible, who gets desperate? Who gets irritated? Who tries to provoke you just to get some reaction? Their behavior reveals more about them than about you, and it shows just how much you're still being manipulated without even realizing it. You keep giving parts of yourself away, trying to please, to keep the peace, to hold on to people who were never really with you. And with every forced yes, every knee-jerk reaction, and every drained emotion, you give away a little piece of your energy. What's left in the end? Exhaustion, frustration, an emptiness you can't quite explain. Here's why. You're too available to people who don't even deserve a moment of your silence. This isn't about turning your back on the world. It's about choosing yourself. It's about understanding what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming whole, authentic, and complete. That journey starts when you realize that silence can be stronger than 1,000 arguments, and that withdrawal, when it comes from awareness, not escape, is a true act of power. So let me ask you this. How long will you continue to let others control your emotions? How long will you react like a puppet every time someone pokes at your wounds? Maybe it's time to cut those strings, to become a mystery, to withdraw. Because when you stop being readily available, everything changes. You've been taught to always show up, to respond immediately, to say yes even when everything inside you is screaming no. Since childhood, you've been conditioned to believe your worth lies in your availability. But let me tell you something that no one might have said clearly. Being excessively available is not a virtue. It's a cage. And as long as you believe you need to be emotionally accessible all the time, you'll be manipulated, drained, and discarded the moment you're no longer useful. Why? Because being always available makes you predictable, and what's predictable gets used. You become someone's emotional emergency button. They press it when they need attention, validation, or comfort, and then they put you back on the shelf. You don't even realize it because you're caught in the illusion that showing up for everyone will make someone show up for you. But it doesn't work like that. Jung talked about the persona, the mask we wear to be accepted, loved, recognized. And it's that very mask that keeps you overly available. You say it's fine when you're suffocating. You answer texts while you're exhausted. You explain, justify, and defend, as if you owe the world an explanation for existing. But the more you stand at the center of everyone else's life, the more you disappear from your own. Being constantly available is a quiet form of self-abandonment. It's a masked attempt to gain approval, to avoid rejection, to manage how others see you. But that kind of control comes at a cost, your peace. Your energy is spread thin as if it were endless, when in reality, it's anything but. People who demand your constant availability don't actually want you. They want what you give them: comfort, distraction, and validation. And when you stop playing that role, when you set a boundary, take your time, and stop reacting, those same people get upset. They say you've changed, but you haven't changed. You've just stopped being convenient. And here's the harshest truth. The more available you are, the less others value you. What's too abundant becomes disposable. No one treasures what they don't have to earn. No one values what's always just there. So stop for a moment and really think, who truly deserves your time? Your attention, your presence, your listening, or better yet, who actually deserves your absence? Before you can answer that honestly, you need to understand something essential. Why do we react so much? Why do we give in so easily? What's behind this automatic urge to respond? The answer lies in what Carl Jung called psychic energy, and that's what we need to talk about next. Because your energy is everything. It's all you have, and if you don't learn how to protect it, someone else will use it against you. Carl Jung didn't see the human psyche as a machine that just reacts without consequences. To him, the mind is an energy system. Every thought, every emotion, every action, each one consumes energy. So the real question becomes, are you choosing where your energy goes, or are you letting the world decide for you? Every time you react impulsively, you're wasting psychic energy. When you defend yourself against criticism that wasn't even worth your attention, when you engage in meaningless arguments just to prove a point, When you try to please people who don't value you, you're draining your own power on things that don't nourish you. Jung put it simply, that which you resist persists. The more you react, the more you become entangled. People who constantly feel emotionally drained aren't weak, they're simply misdirected. And here's the danger. When you're exhausted, you become vulnerable. And when you're vulnerable, you're easy prey. Manipulative, opportunistic, emotionally dependent people can sense this. They see that you don't know how to guard your energy, that you react to everything, that you're constantly trying to fix things, make peace, smooth things over, and they use that against you. Jung said a healthy psyche knows how to keep energy within itself. That means knowing how to say no without guilt, knowing how to stay silent without feeling like a coward, knowing how to observe before acting. Because real power isn't in reacting, it's in choosing when and how to respond. And that kind of power only comes when you know yourself deeply, when you understand your own impulses before they take control. How many times have you lost sleep over a conversation that never found resolution? How many hours have you wasted replaying what you should have said, or trying to figure out why someone treated you poorly? That's energy, wasted, gone. You're keeping old ghosts alive. You're feeding emotional patterns that only persist because you won't stop reacting, because you keep trying to fix what isn't yours to fix. Your psychic energy is like a force field. When protected, it creates presence. You walk into a room and people feel it, even if you don't say a word. But when it's scattered and poorly managed, you fade. You become reactive, fragile. And the world has no mercy for those who give in too easily. So start watching your triggers. What sets you off without thought? What makes you lose your center? Those exact moments are where your energy escapes, and that's where your work begins. Not to become cold, not to become detached, but to become selective, to become sovereign over yourself. And here's one of Jung's most powerful insights. When you conserve your energy, you break the projections others place on you. And that deeply unsettles people. Because now we're entering a darker space, silent manipulation. In the next part, we'll explore how opportunistic people feed off your energy and why your unavailability completely disarms their game. Prepare to look into the eyes of those who've been draining you without you even knowing it. You think you're in control. You believe your reactions are conscious choices. But the truth is more unsettling. Most of your emotional responses are programmed, and those who understand that manipulate you easily. They don't need to shout. They don't need to threaten. They don't even have to ask. They just push the right buttons, the ones you've unknowingly left exposed. And you react every time. Carl Jung called this projection, the psychological mechanism by which people unload their unconscious issues onto others, making you the battleground for conflicts that were never yours to begin with. People project what they cannot see in themselves, but there's another side to this that often goes unnoticed. While others project onto you, you become the receptacle for those projections. And the more emotionally available you are, the more you become a blank canvas for their illusions. Think about it. That friend who only calls when they're falling apart. That partner who always needs you to fix everything. That person who praises you, but only as long as you're useful. None of that is random. They're not truly relating to you. They're engaging with their idea of you, with the role you've agreed to play. And why do you play along? Because you're afraid. Afraid to disappoint, afraid of not being loved. Afraid of being abandoned? The most effective manipulation doesn't happen through loud demands. It happens quietly, through guilt. It seeps in when you start believing that you owe people your time, that you must always be available, always understanding, even when it tears you up inside. Here's the core truth. A manipulator doesn't need to control you, they just need you to keep reacting the same way. But when you stop reacting, the game breaks. When you say no, when you stay silent, when you pull away instead of explaining yourself, the illusion falls apart. The mask they placed on you slips. And suddenly, they don't know who you are anymore. Worse, they're forced to look at themselves. And not everyone is ready for that. Your unavailability becomes a threat. It forces people to face their own emptiness. The silence you offer reflects back all the internal noise they've been avoiding. And so the backlash begins. Criticism, emotional drama, not because you're wrong, but because you're no longer playing the part. Jung once wrote, "We do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." When you step away, when you stop feeding the cycle, the shadows of others start to surface. And that is unbearable for those who've used you as their escape. But now the question is this. Are you ready? Are you prepared for the discomfort that comes with being misunderstood, rejected, even attacked for protecting yourself? Are you willing to endure the silence that follows rupture? Because it's in that silence that a new kind of power is born. And that's what we'll explore now. Why silence, more than words, can be the most devastating weapon of the human psyche, and how it shifts the balance between you and the world. We live in a loud world. Everyone wants to be heard. Everyone wants to respond quickly, to win the debate, to make their point, even at the cost of their peace. But there is a quieter, rarer kind of power, a power few know, and even fewer master. The power of silence, not the silence of passivity or fear, but conscious, strategic, brutally clear silence. The kind that's not absence, but amplified presence. Jung didn't see silence as emptiness. He saw it as fertile ground for transformation. Because when you stop reacting, you start observing. And when you observe, you begin to see the patterns, manipulations, emotional loops, the ways you sabotage yourself. Silence brings clarity, and clarity is dangerous to those who rely on your confusion to keep control. Notice how some people panic when you don't respond, when you don't explain yourself, when you simply disappear? It's not that they miss you, it's that your silence takes away their control of the narrative. As long as you're speaking, you're still in the game. But when you're silent, you change the rules. And that unbalances anyone who depends on your reaction to maintain their power. Because real silence isn't about withholding your voice. It's about owning your energy. It's choosing not to be dragged into emotions that aren't yours. It's refusing to fight battles that aren't worth your soul. Jung said individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, requires distance. And only in silence can you hear your own voice without the world drowning it out. But don't be fooled. Silence has a price. It will distance you from people who only valued the version of you that served them. It will make you seem cold, distant, and arrogant, but that's only because some people were never interested in your depth, only your utility. And here's the hard truth. The more you grow, the more selective you become with your words. Because you learn that every sentence is an investment of energy, and not everyone deserves access to your truth. Sometimes silence isn't retreat, it's sovereignty. It's the language of those who have nothing left to prove. Silence is uncomfortable, for others, because it makes them face their own noise, their own emptiness, their own unfinished stories, and that discomfort tells you more about them than any argument ever could. You don't need to explain your absence, it explains itself, and those who feel threatened by it, they're revealing just how much they depended on your imbalance to keep themselves steady. But the most powerful silence of all, it's not the one that unsettles others. It's the silence that rebuilds you from within. The silence that connects you to something beyond the need for approval, beyond fear, beyond performance. It's the silence of becoming, and it changes everything. It's in that internal space, free from the demands and noise of others, that you begin to recover your vital energy. You reconnect with your essence, but cutting out external noise is only the beginning. It's not enough to create space. You have to relearn how to use your energy. You must choose consciously where your energy goes, where it stays, and, most importantly, where it should never be wasted. You have to learn to be selective with your soul. If you're in the process of reclaiming your energy and setting boundaries, this is the work. This is the discipline. It's what I explore deeply in my book Beyond the Shadow, which breaks down Jung's most transformative insights and gives you practical tools to protect your energy, set firm boundaries, and reconnect with your true self. But let's be honest, none of this matters if it remains only in your head. Understanding all of this intellectually means nothing if, in practice, you still say yes when you mean no. Respond to messages that drain you. Engage in conversations that feel hollow. Maintain relationships that exist only out of habit. Awareness without action is just another form of self-deception. Real transformation begins the moment you decide to become selective and stay disciplined about it. Emotional discipline means recognizing that conscious unavailability is not cruelty. It's not arrogance, it's not apathy, it's clarity. It's the decision to stop being accessible to everyone, at any time, for any reason. It's the act of reclaiming your time, your energy, your peace. And it starts with the smallest choices. Do not respond immediately. Take a breath before reacting. Walk away from chaos instead of being dragged into it. Turn off your phone without guilt. Say, not today. Say, I'm not interested. Say, I won't get involved. Here's what's most important. You don't need to justify your silence. You don't need to explain your absence. You owe no one your constant availability. You owe only yourself your truth. And for some people, that's unforgivable. Because the moment you stop explaining yourself, you take away their power to keep you in their emotional narrative, where you are always the helper, the fixer, the endlessly understanding one. Carl Jung understood that every true individuation journey, every deep transformation, passes through isolation. But not a depressive isolation, a sacred one, a quiet retreat into the self, a return to your own voice, untainted by the noise of the world. It's in this sacred silence that you begin to rebuild your identity, not from the eyes of others, but from your own center. And if you want a reliable test of your growth, here it is. Watch who pulls away when you become more reserved. Notice who tries to provoke you when you stop reacting. Pay attention to who accuses you of changing the moment you start protecting yourself. These are not signs you're doing something wrong. They're signs you're finally breaking free. Being unavailable is uncomfortable at first. You'll feel guilty. You'll wonder if you're being selfish. People will say you're cold, too harsh, too distant. But this discomfort is part of the deconstruction. You've spent your life being conditioned to come second. Of course, it feels wrong to finally put yourself first. But it isn't wrong. It's unfamiliar, and that unfamiliarity, the guilt, the discomfort, isn't a red flag. It's the price of change, because everyone who benefited from the old version of you will resist the new one. Conscious unavailability is the foundation of self-determination. When you say no to the world, you are saying yes to yourself. When you withdraw from a toxic environment, you're not just walking away. You're making a declaration. Your peace is worth more than any false connection. And when you stop explaining yourself, something profound happens. You begin to be respected, not by everyone, but by those who matter, because not everyone is ready for this kind of presence. Your emotional absence shines a light on wounds others aren't ready to face, on how deeply they depended on your chaos to feel in control. That's when the rupture comes. And with it, the pain, the loneliness, the ache of estrangement, the illusion that you're losing something. But you're not losing anything. You're freeing yourself. So what happens after the rupture? What's born from the silence? In this final part, we'll talk about the rebirth. The kind that only begins when you find the courage to be misunderstood, to be alone, to become whole on your own. Because this is why the solitude of the strong leads to true freedom. When you stop being available to everyone, something begins to shift. First comes the silence. A heavy, uncomfortable silence that screams inside you. You ask yourself, did I go too far? Am I being too cold? Am I losing people who cared about me? But that silence, it starts to soften. It begins to cleanse, to calm, to heal. And then comes the solitude. But not the solitude of abandonment. The solitude of presence. Your presence. The solitude of someone who no longer betrays themselves just to keep others close. And in that sacred space where there was once confusion, clarity enters. Where there was once anxiety, peace arrives. Where there was once neediness, a quiet, steady strength emerges. The strength of being whole within yourself. Carl Jung said the path to individuation, the journey of becoming who you truly are, requires stepping away from the collective, letting go of the persona, and walking alone for a while. That's what you're doing now. You're not running from the world. You're returning to yourself. And this is the turning point. You stop being shaped by the noise around you and begin to shape reality from your inner stillness. The ones who feel discomfort in your absence, they never wanted you. They wanted the role you played. Now that you've stepped out of character, they don't know what to do with you. And that realization is liberation. Yes, you will lose people, but you will find yourself. You will distance yourself from places, but you will reconnect with your essence. You will be misunderstood, but for the first time you will be respected. Because when you are no longer available for anything, you become valuable, rare, unforgettable. And make no mistake, this is a rebirth, a new beginning. The start of a life where you are no longer available for emotional crumbs, manipulative games, voids pretending to be love. From now on, you only accept what aligns with your peace, your truth, and your wholeness. And if you've made it this far, it's because a part of you is already ready. A part of you knows, being loved means nothing if you have to abandon yourself for it. Real self-love begins when you choose yourself, even if it means walking alone for a while. So tell me, Are you ready to be misunderstood, rejected, even hated in the name of your inner freedom? Are you willing to pay the price of being you? If this message resonated, write in the comments, "I choose my peace." Do you ever feel like life is slipping through your fingers, like you're treading water in an ocean of distractions, obligations, and routines? You're working hard, keeping busy, but deep down there's this nagging voice whispering, "Is this it?" You're not alone. Millions wake up every day feeling like something's missing, like they're not living the life they were meant to live. Maybe it's the job you settled for, the relationship that feels more like obligation than connection, or the time lost to scrolling and dreams postponed for someday. Here's the hard truth. Someday doesn't come. If we're not careful, years slip by unnoticed. So, what would it take for you to stop wasting your life? Carl Jung, one of the greatest minds in psychology, spent his life trying to answer that question. He believed that much of our suffering comes from a disconnection between the life we're living and the life we're meant to live. And the longer we stay disconnected, the more restless, frustrated, and unfulfilled we become. But it doesn't have to stay that way. Jung left us a roadmap to understanding ourselves and reclaiming the life we were born to live. His teachings aren't just theories, they're tools, practical ways to stop wasting your potential. According to Jung, wasting your life isn't about laziness or bad luck. It's about ignoring your deeper self, your desires, your fears, your potential. And the first step to change is understanding why you feel stuck in the first place. We'll explore some of Jung's most powerful concepts, why we feel stuck, how the shadow holds us back, and how the process of individuation leads us toward meaning and wholeness. Imagine starting each day with clarity. Instead of avoiding fears, you face them. Instead of wasting time, you invest in what truly fulfills you. This isn't about adding more to your to-do list. It's about facing yourself, taking ownership, and transforming from within. Carl Jung, a Swiss psychiatrist born in 1875, began as a close collaborator with Freud, but quickly moved beyond Freud's views. Jung wanted to understand what makes us truly human and how we can live fulfilling lives. His approach, analytical psychology, explored the deeper layers of the mind, where our unconscious motivations, fears, and symbols reside. One of Jung's central ideas is individuation, the journey of becoming your truest self. He believed each of us has a unique potential. To reach it, we must face our inner world, our ignored parts, our hidden strengths, our unconscious motivations, and align our conscious choices with our deeper truths. Another major concept is the shadow, the aspects of ourselves we repress, deny, or project onto others. Think about traits you dislike in others: arrogance, laziness, selfishness. Often, these are traits we haven't accepted in ourselves. Jung believed that unless we integrate our shadow, it will control us unconsciously, leading to self-sabotage and unhealthy patterns. Jung also introduced the collective unconscious, a shared mental blueprint filled with archetypes, universal patterns like the hero, the mentor, or the trickster. These appear in myths, dreams, and pop culture because they reflect shared human experiences. They offer insight into our challenges and potential. Jung's work matters now more than ever. In a world obsessed with productivity and image, many feel disconnected from themselves. We chase success, validation, and security, but ignore our inner voice. Jung would say that this disconnect is the root of modern unhappiness. Let's go deeper. What does it really mean to waste your life? It's not just distractions or lost time, it's about living passively. Doing what's expected, not what's meaningful. Staying in unfulfilling jobs or relationships because change feels scary. Letting fear or habit guide your decisions instead of your values. Another way we waste our lives is by burying our potential. We all have talents and passions, but we silence them with excuses. I'm too busy, I'm not good enough, I'll try later. Procrastination, Jung believed, isn't just laziness. It's often fear, of failure, of judgment, or even of success. We're also shaped by external expectations. Maybe you pursued a career because it made sense to others. Maybe you curate your image more than your relationships. Jung believed that living according to someone else's script leads to feeling lost. Wasting your life for Jung comes down to disconnection from your inner self. Your unconscious mind holds truths about your desires and fears, but when you drown it out with distractions or pressures, you fragment. You might seem fine on the outside, but inside you're restless or even despairing. Whether it's procrastination, staying in the wrong job, or craving validation, the root issue is the same. A gap between who you are and how you're living. Jung's solution? Reconnect with yourself. Pay attention to what feels empty. Ask yourself, am I here because it's safe or because it's right for me? Are you procrastinating out of fear? Are you chasing what matters to you or what looks good to others? Living with purpose requires courage. It means facing your fears, stepping outside your comfort zone, and doing the inner work. But it's the only way to stop wasting your life. When you align your choices with your inner truth, you gain clarity and fulfillment. You stop drifting and start creating a meaningful life. The good news? It's never too late to begin. Whether you're 17 or 70, Jung's work offers a way to reconnect with yourself and your path. As Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. So ask yourself, where are you living passively? What dreams have you buried? What would it look like to come home to yourself? These are hard questions, but they are the beginning of change. If we don't confront it, it can control us in ways we don't even realize. It might show up as self-sabotage, toxic relationships, procrastination, or irrational fears. Why is facing the shadow so important? Because the parts of yourself you suppress don't just disappear. They lurk in the background, influencing your thoughts and actions in subtle but powerful ways. For example, if you suppress your anger, it might come out as passive-aggressive behavior or unexplained frustration. If you deny your ambition, you might find yourself resenting others who succeed. Carl Jung believed that integrating the shadow, accepting and understanding these hidden parts of yourself, is essential for living a full and authentic life. How do you confront your shadow? Start by paying attention to what triggers you. Do certain people or situations make you angry, jealous, or anxious? These reactions can be clues to parts of yourself that you've been avoiding. Journaling can also help. Write down your thoughts and feelings honestly without judgment. Ask yourself, what am I afraid to admit about myself? What part of me do I not want others to see? Facing these questions might feel uncomfortable, but it's the first step to breaking free from the patterns that hold you back. Meaning and myth, finding your purpose through symbols. Jung believed that humans are deeply connected to symbols and stories. Myths, dreams, and art aren't just random, they reflect universal truths about the human experience. He called these universal patterns archetypes, and he believed they live in our collective unconscious. Archetypes like the hero, the mentor, or the shadow represent the challenges and transformations we all face in life. By tapping into these symbols and stories, we can find meaning and purpose in our own lives. Think about the stories or symbols that resonate with you. Maybe you've always been drawn to tales of overcoming great odds or embarking on a journey of self-discovery. These aren't just entertaining, they're reflections of the inner journey you need to take. Recognizing these patterns can help you understand your own struggles and guide you toward the life you want to live. For example, if you feel stuck or lost, you might identify with the archetype of the hero. The hero's journey is about stepping out of your comfort zone, facing challenges, and growing stronger in the process. Thinking of your life in these terms can give you a sense of purpose and direction. You're not just aimlessly drifting, you're on a journey, and every challenge you face is an opportunity for growth. Practical ways to apply Jung's concepts. Jung's concepts might seem abstract at first, but there are practical ways to apply them to your life. Here are some steps you can take today. Number 1, journaling and dream analysis. One of the simplest yet most effective ways to connect with your unconscious mind is to start a journal. Write down your thoughts, feelings, and recurring dreams. Dreams, according to Jung, are messages from your unconscious. They often use symbols to reveal what's going on beneath the surface. Pay attention to recurring symbols or themes in your dreams and ask yourself what they might represent. For example, if you often dream of being lost, it might reflect feelings of uncertainty or a lack of direction in your waking life. Number 2, explore what excites or frustrates you. Your emotions are powerful guides. What activities or ideas make you feel alive and energized? What situations frustrate or anger you? These reactions are clues to your shadow and your true desires. For example, if you feel jealous of someone who's pursuing their passion, it might be a sign that you're ignoring your own creative potential. Use these feelings as starting points for self-reflection. Number 3, practice self-honesty. Living authentically requires brutal honesty with yourself. Take a hard look at your life and ask, am I living according to my values, or am I just going through the motions? Be willing to admit where you've been settling, avoiding, or procrastinating. This isn't about beating yourself up. It's about creating a clear picture of where you are so you can decide where you want to go. Number 4, integrate your shadow. Once you've identified parts of your shadow, work on accepting them. This doesn't mean indulging in harmful behaviors. It means understanding and integrating those parts of yourself in healthy ways. For example, if you've suppressed your anger, find constructive ways to express it, like setting boundaries or standing up for yourself. If you've denied your need for rest, give yourself permission to take a break without guilt. Number 5, connect with symbols and stories. Look for inspiration in myths, art, and stories that resonate with you. Reflect on how these symbols apply to your own life. For example, if you admire the resilience of a fictional character, ask yourself how you can embody that quality in your own challenges. Jung's teachings aren't quick fixes, they're tools for lifelong growth. They require patience, reflection, and courage. But the reward is worth it. By embracing these ideas, you can stop wasting your life on things that don't matter and start living with purpose, authenticity, and meaning. You'll move from a state of disconnection to one of alignment, where your actions reflect your true self and your life feels like your own. Recognizing when you're wasting your life. It's not always easy to realize when you're wasting your life. We get caught up in routines, responsibilities, and distractions, often pushing aside the uneasy feelings that tell us something is wrong. But those feelings, boredom, dissatisfaction, or a nagging sense of being stuck, are like warning lights on the dashboard of your car. They're signals from your unconscious mind telling you it's time to pay attention and make a change. Carl Jung believed these signals are not random. They're your psyche's way of urging you to wake up and take control of your life. Signs you might be wasting your life. Chronic boredom or dissatisfaction. This isn't the boredom of waiting in line or sitting through a dull meeting. It's a deeper, persistent feeling that your life is missing something important. Maybe you go to work every day, but it feels like a grind. You're not excited by what you do, and you can't see how it connects to anything meaningful. Even your free time might feel empty, filled with mindless scrolling, binge-watching, or distractions that don't bring real joy. If you constantly feel like you're just killing time, it's a clear sign something needs to change. Feeling unmotivated or stuck? Do you wake up in the morning without any sense of purpose? Do you procrastinate even on things that matter? Feeling stuck can happen for a lot of reasons. Fear of failure, being overwhelmed by choices, or simply living on autopilot for so long that you've forgotten what you're passionate about. Jung would say this feeling is often a sign that you're out of alignment with your deeper self. Your unconscious mind knows you're capable of more, but your conscious mind is resisting change, living according to others' expectations. From a young age, we're taught to seek approval from parents, teachers, peers, and society. Maybe you chose a career because it was practical, not because you loved it. Maybe you're in a relationship because it looks good from the outside, even though it doesn't truly fulfill you. When you make decisions based on what others want or expect, you're not living your life, you're living theirs. Over time, this leads to dissatisfaction because you're ignoring your own values and desires. Listening to the signals. Jung believed that these feelings, boredom, dissatisfaction, lack of motivation, and the pressure to conform, are all signals from the unconscious mind. They're not random annoyances. They're messages trying to get your attention, urging you to stop and reflect. If ignored, these signals often grow louder, manifesting as anxiety, depression, or even physical symptoms like fatigue. But if you take the time to listen, these signals can guide you toward a more authentic and fulfilling life. What you can do. Start by asking yourself tough questions. Am I truly happy with how I'm spending my days? Do I feel like I'm making progress towards something meaningful? When was the last time I felt genuinely excited about something? These questions might feel uncomfortable, but they're essential for self-reflection. The process isn't easy. It requires courage, self-awareness, and a willingness to face uncomfortable truths, but it's also deeply rewarding. By listening to these signals and taking action, you can stop wasting your life and start living in a way that feels meaningful and true to who you are. So pause for a moment and ask yourself, are you happy with your life? If not, what needs to change? These questions might not have easy answers, but they're the ones that matter most. And the sooner you start asking them, the sooner you can begin the journey toward a life that feels truly yours. Taking control of your life isn't about flipping a switch and expecting everything to change overnight. It's about making consistent, conscious decisions to align your actions with who you truly are and what you truly want. Jung's teachings provide a powerful framework for this process. By facing your shadow, seeking meaning, and embracing growth, you can gradually reclaim your path and live a life that feels authentic and fulfilling. Let's break this down into actionable steps. Number 1, face the shadow. Reflect on uncomfortable truths about yourself. One of the most important yet challenging steps in taking control of your life is confronting your shadow. The shadow, as Jung described it, consists of the parts of yourself that you don't want to acknowledge. Your fears, insecurities, and flaws, but also hidden strengths and untapped potential. These parts of you don't go away just because you ignore them. In fact, the more you suppress them, the more control they can exert over your life in unconscious ways. Facing your shadow starts with self-honesty. This means taking a deep, unfiltered look at yourself. What are the habits or patterns in your life that you're not proud of? Are you quick to anger? Do you avoid confrontation at all costs? Do you struggle with procrastination or constantly seek approval from others? These behaviors often stem from parts of your shadow. For example, if you procrastinate, it might be because you're afraid of failure. If you avoid confrontation, it might be because you fear rejection. To begin this process, set aside time for reflection. Journaling can be a powerful tool. Write about the situations or people that trigger strong emotions in you. Ask yourself why those situations bother you so much. Often, the traits we dislike in others are mirrors of the traits we deny in ourselves. For example, if arrogance irritates you, it could be because you've suppressed your own confidence. By acknowledging these hidden parts of yourself, you can start to integrate them in healthy ways. Facing your shadow isn't about beating yourself up or trying to fix yourself. It's about understanding that every part of you, even the ones you don't like, has something valuable to teach you. When you confront these truths head-on, you take away their power to control you. You become more self-aware, more balanced, and more capable of making intentional choices. Number 2, seek meaning. Explore your interests and passions. Once you've begun to face your shadow, the next step is to seek meaning in your life. Jung believed that a life without meaning is one of the greatest sources of unhappiness. Meaning isn't something you find outside of yourself. It's something you create by exploring what genuinely excites and fulfills you. What are the things that make you feel alive? What would you spend your time doing if there were no limits or expectations? Start by asking yourself some simple but powerful questions. What do I truly care about? What am I curious about? What activities make me lose track of time? These questions can help you uncover your passions and interests. Don't worry if the answers don't seem grand or impressive. Meaning doesn't have to come from a life-changing career or a world-famous talent. It can come from small, everyday things, helping others, creating art, learning something new, or simply spending time with people you care about. If you're unsure where to start, try experimenting. Take a class, read a book on a topic you've always been curious about, or try a new hobby. Pay attention to how these activities make you feel. Do they energize you? Do they spark your curiosity? If something doesn't resonate with you, that's okay. The process of seeking meaning is about trial and error. Jung also emphasized the importance of symbolic thinking and finding meaning. Symbols, myths, and archetypes can help you connect with deeper layers of your psyche. For example, think about the stories or characters you've always admired. Maybe you're drawn to the hero archetype, which represents courage and growth, or perhaps the creator archetype, which embodies innovation and imagination. These archetypes can provide clues about the qualities and values that are most important to you. Number 3, embrace growth. See challenges as opportunities for transformation. Growth isn't always easy. It often involves stepping outside of your comfort zone, facing setbacks, and pushing through discomfort. But Jung believed that challenges and struggles are essential for personal transformation. In fact, he argued that growth often comes from confronting difficulties rather than avoiding them. To embrace growth, start by shifting your mindset about challenges. Instead of seeing them as obstacles, try to view them as opportunities to learn and evolve. For example, if you've recently faced a failure, ask yourself, what can I learn from this experience? How can I use it to become stronger or wiser? Growth doesn't mean avoiding pain or difficulty. It means finding meaning in those experiences and using them as stepping stones toward a better version of yourself. A great way to embrace growth is to set small, achievable goals that challenge you. These goals should push you just outside your comfort zone, but still feel manageable. For instance, if you struggle with social anxiety, your goal might be to start a conversation with a new person once a week. If you've been avoiding a creative project because you're afraid of failure, your goal might be to spend 30 minutes a day working on it regardless of the outcome. Each time you achieve a goal, no matter how small, you'll build confidence and momentum. Remember that growth isn't a straight path. There will be setbacks and moments of doubt, but these moments are part of the process. Jung compared personal growth to the process of alchemy, turning lead into gold. Just like in alchemy, transformation takes time, effort, and patience. Each challenge you face is an opportunity to refine and strengthen yourself, bringing you closer to your true potential. Do you think you really know the people around you? You might believe you can spot someone toxic, feel it when the energy is off, or recognize when someone crosses a line. But what if I told you that the real dangers often don't look like danger at all? That the most destructive people can seem kind, charming, even be people you love? While you're guarding yourself against obvious threats, you might be opening the doors of your mind to something far more dangerous. The unconscious of others quietly invading your own. Carl Jung dedicated his life to exploring these hidden dynamics. In his work, The Ego and the Unconscious, he revealed that most of what drives us lies far beyond conscious awareness. And this doesn't just apply to you, it applies to everyone. That's where the true danger lies. Because when someone is blind to their own darkness, their shadow doesn't just disappear, it looks for a host. And often that host is you. Have you ever felt completely drained after a conversation with someone? Found yourself blamed for things you didn't do? Or cast as the savior in someone else's personal tragedy? Jung called this projection, a defense mechanism where someone offloads parts of themselves they can't face by pinning them onto others. And once that happens, you stop being seen as a real person. You become a symbol, a mirror, an imaginary enemy, an idealized hero. But here's the thing all those roles have in common. None of them is actually you. What's even scarier, most of the time you don't even realize it's happening. You think you're helping, being mature, showing empathy. Meanwhile, you're slowly getting pulled into a psychological battlefield that doesn't even belong to you. You begin solving conflicts that aren't yours, absorbing emotions that didn't start with you, being manipulated by dynamics you didn't create, but that now control you. And this isn't just about people with bad intentions. Jung made it very clear, the most dangerous people aren't the openly malicious, they're the ones completely unaware of their own inner chaos. These are people disconnected from their own psyche, living behind masks, shaped by trauma, driven by complexes and repressed desires. They're not necessarily evil, but they are dangerous. And the danger doesn't arrive dramatically. It creeps in quietly, through offhand comments, subtle accusations, pregnant silences, until eventually, you start to question yourself. And when you lose touch with your own inner truth, you risk becoming part of their shadow. Maybe you're experiencing this right now, in a relationship, at work, within your family, and maybe you're blaming yourself, wondering what's wrong with you. But the truth is, there's nothing wrong with you. What's wrong is how your mind and emotions are being used as a vessel for someone else's unconscious baggage. In this video, we'll reveal 6 types of people that Jung would consider emotionally dangerous, not because they're malicious on purpose, but because they're driven by forces they don't even understand themselves. We'll use Jung's own words and insights, drawing from the ego and the unconscious, ion, and archetypes and the collective unconscious, to help you recognize these patterns. But more importantly, to invite you to ask, could some of these patterns exist within me too? If you're ready, take a deep breath. But be warned, after this, you may never see other people or yourself the same way again. Imagine living with someone who blames you for everything they feel, who turns your presence into a trigger, who makes you responsible for emotions you never caused. At first, they might seem fragile, sensitive, deep, but over time you realize you're caught in a war you never agreed to fight, and somehow you're already losing. This is the unconscious manipulator, someone unaware of their own wounds, who projects them onto others as a way of surviving emotionally. Jung wrote, "What we do not confront in ourselves, we will encounter as fate." And often, that fate comes with a name, a face, and sometimes it lives under the same roof as you. The unconscious manipulator is dominated by unresolved trauma, buried emotions, and repressed pain. Instead of turning inward, they turn outward and make you the battleground for their internal conflicts. This kind of person lives in a state of constant projection, Jung explained that projection is a natural part of the psyche. But if you don't recognize it, it becomes destructive. In The Ego and the Unconscious, he warned that projection leads to a kind of psychic blindness, a prison where the other person is no longer seen as they truly are, but merely as a reflection of what's unacknowledged within ourselves. That's exactly what the unconscious manipulator does. They don't see you. They see a fragmented part of themselves, and they react as if that part is real, as if it's you. These people often play the victim, but not consciously. They truly believe in their suffering, so deeply that they need someone to carry it for them. And if you're not careful, that someone becomes you. For the unconscious manipulator, nothing is ever their fault. If they're angry, it's because you provoked them. If they're sad, it's because you let them down. If they feel inferior, it's because they believe you think you're better than them. This distortion is so subtle that over time, you begin to doubt yourself. Was I really that insensitive? Did I say something wrong? Am I the toxic one here? And that's how the manipulation works. No yelling, no direct accusations, just emotional suggestion, unspoken, unconscious, and incredibly effective. What makes it worse is that these people are often charismatic. They can be sensitive, emotionally intense, and captivating. And that creates a trap. You start to believe you can help them, heal them, understand them in a way others can't. But in reality, you're sacrificing your emotional well-being to save someone who refuses to look within. And the more you try, the deeper you sink. Jung warned us, projection doesn't just confuse relationships, it transforms people into symbols. Savior, enemy, traitor, father, mother. Anything but who you actually are. Living in this kind of symbolic bond is like living inside someone else's dream. You stop being seen as a real person and instead become a distorted reflection of someone else's unconscious. The only way to protect yourself is awareness. Learn to spot the pattern, cut the invisible threads tying you to their emotional drama, and most importantly, keep asking yourself, are these feelings mine, or were they planted in me? Because the unconscious manipulator doesn't break down your door. They walk in through the open window of your empathy. And once you recognize this pattern, you'll begin to see how it disguises itself even more deeply through the persona. The persona is a mask, a social role we all use to adapt. But some people don't just wear the mask. They become it. They not only project onto others, they build their entire lives around being someone they are not. In the next section, we'll explore the bearer of the persona, one of the most dangerous psychological profiles Jung identified. Because while the unconscious manipulator burdens you with their pain, the bearer of the persona can slowly make you forget who you really are. Not all psychological threats come in the form of conflict or chaos. Sometimes they come wrapped in perfection. The ever-ready smile, the polished posture, the flawless image. We live in a world obsessed with appearances, where seeming has replaced being. For Jung, this was a profound danger. Because when someone over-identifies with their persona, the role they play in society, they lose touch with who they really are. And when someone becomes the mask, they don't just lose themselves. They begin to distort everyone around them too. In The Ego and the Unconscious, Jung wrote that the persona is not who someone is. It's who they and others think they are. It's a carefully crafted identity, shaped by family expectations, social rules, and professional demands. Having a persona isn't inherently wrong. We all use it. It helps us navigate life, be a teacher, a doctor, a friend, a parent. The danger begins when someone believes they are only that. When the mask fuses to the face and everything spontaneous, vulnerable, and real gets locked away in the basement of the psyche. This is the bearer of the persona, the master of surface-level charm. They say the right things. They behave the right way. They avoid conflict at all costs. But behind the curtain of control is a soul in pieces. The more they preserve the image, the more they suffocate their authentic self. And that repression doesn't disappear. It accumulates. For those living with this type of person, the effects can be deeply unsettling. You sense something is off but can't put your finger on it. Interactions feel hollow, rehearsed. There's no depth, no raw truth. Even worse, they expect you to maintain the illusion too. You're expected to perform, to stay in character, to cooperate with the theater. If you express something real, an intense feeling, a personal doubt, they retreat. They become distant, cold, uncomfortable. Because anything that reminds them of their own hidden self is unbearable. Jung believed this type of identification with the persona is one of the greatest dangers to the journey of individuation, the path to true self-knowledge. The moment you start believing that your mask is your identity, you begin to lose your soul. And that's the risk. When someone lives for approval, praise, and validation, they become a prisoner of their own image. Everything genuine, emotion, spontaneity, vulnerability, gets buried under the need to be accepted. Living with someone like this can make you question your own authenticity. You start censoring yourself, measuring your words, hiding the parts of you that don't fit the script. Little by little, you start wearing a mask too, without even noticing. And coexisting with the bearer of the persona isn't just artificial, it's contagious. But there's something even darker, because when someone represses what they truly think, feel, and want for too long, it doesn't vanish. It builds, it festers, it grows in the shadows, and eventually, it comes back, not as sadness or a quiet longing, but as an explosion. In the next section, we'll dive into the figure of the owner of the repressed shadow, the one who refuses to confront their own darkness, until it erupts. This type of person often seems composed, polite, measured, always correct, always balanced, always in control. But beneath that carefully curated calm lies a storm waiting to be unleashed, because everything they consider unacceptable, anger, envy, desire, rage, isn't resolved or understood. It's buried, hidden, repressed, and repression is not healing, it is simply delay. This is the essence of the owner of the repressed shadow, someone who tries to be the light at all times until the darkness consumes them. Carl Jung devoted a major part of his work to this concept. In Ion, he writes, "The shadow is everything that the individual refuses to acknowledge about themselves, and yet it still appears in one form or another." The shadow isn't some external evil. It's not them, or the world, or the enemy. It is us. It is the hatred we pretend not to feel, the envy we justify, the desire we shame, the ambition we hide under false humility. Whatever we reject in ourselves doesn't disappear. It goes underground. It becomes the shadow. And as Jung warned, what you do not make conscious will direct your life, and you will call it fate. The owner of the repressed shadow rarely appears dangerous. In fact, they're often admired. Kind, controlled. Good. But there's something off. They don't tolerate weakness. They bristle at spontaneity. They seem constantly on edge, but never express it. Until they explode. And when they do, the outburst is shocking, disproportionate, devastating. Because their entire emotional life has been kept under pressure, locked away in a vault of silence and self-denial. These individuals live in a state of emotional vigilance. They don't allow themselves to feel, so they condemn those who do. They don't allow themselves to fail, so they attack those who slip. They become moralistic, rigid, controlling. But beneath all that discipline is not strength. It's fear, fear of the shadow breaking through. Jung was clear. The stronger the persona, the more repressed the shadow, and the more repressed the shadow, the more brutal its eruption. You can spot this pattern in those who overreact to minor issues, hold grudges for years, sabotage relationships in quiet, cutting ways. They're often described as difficult, bitter, hypercritical. No one understands why, but the answer is simple. The shadow, ignored, unacknowledged, denied. And here's the key insight. The shadow isn't made of only bad things. Jung emphasized that it also contains our rejected potential. Our creativity, our strength, our passion, our vitality. If left in the dark, all of it rots. And what could have been life-giving becomes poisonous. That poison spills out into relationships, workplaces, families, contaminating everything, especially those closest. Living with the owner of the repressed shadow is like living near an emotional minefield. You never know what will set them off. You just know that one day something will. But this kind of repression isn't born from nowhere. It's often rooted in an illusion, an image of moral superiority, of being above desire, emotion, and failure. And this leads us directly to the next figure, the moral controller. The moral controller doesn't just repress their own impulses, they turn your desires into sins. Not every executioner carries a sword. Some wield crosses, commandments, and polished words. These are the people who claim to be driven by ethics, values, righteousness, but in truth, they're driven by a need to control, through guilt and shame. Jung was well aware of this archetype. For him, morality used as a mask is one of the most dangerous forms of repression. Because when someone hides behind virtue, they become blind to their own darkness. This is the moral controller, someone who projects their shadow onto others, then condemns them for it. You've likely encountered someone like this. They always point fingers, but never self-reflect. They preach standards, but secretly struggle with their own impulses. They seem like role models, not because they are, but because they need to believe they are. As Jung wrote, the greater the repression, the more powerful the projection. That is the core of the moral controller's behavior. They turn others into sinners, deviants, wrongdoers, so they don't have to confront what's lurking inside themselves. And what makes them especially dangerous is this: they genuinely believe they're helping. They think they're correcting, saving, guiding. That's what makes their influence so toxic. Because the guilt they inflict doesn't come from cruelty, it comes from a misplaced sense of righteousness. Because it is cloaked in authority, good intentions, and false spirituality, the moral controller's criticism doesn't feel like cruelty, it feels like concern. They say things like, "It's for your own good, you'll thank me later." Someone has to tell you the truth. But this so-called truth is not neutral. It is charged with projection. What they condemn in you is often what they refuse to see in themselves. In Ion, Jung explores the figures of Christ and the Antichrist as archetypes, not literal, but psychological symbols representing integration and dissociation. The moral controller imagines themselves as embodying the light, righteous, virtuous, pure. But in doing so, they split off their darkness and project it outward. They turn others into sinners to maintain the illusion of being saintly. This self-deception makes them blind to their own contradictions, blind to the complexity of the human soul. If you live near someone like this, you may begin to feel guilty, not for doing harm, but simply for being. You feel constantly watched, judged, diminished. And the most insidious part? You internalize it. You start to censor yourself. You repress what is natural. You trim your spontaneity, your vitality, to fit someone else's moral mold. You live in a prison made of borrowed values. This dynamic is common in families, religious institutions, and any rigid system where obedience is mistaken for virtue. Jung saw this pattern as a genuine threat to the process of individuation. Because where there is excessive moralism, there is a profound lack of self-knowledge. The moralist does not seek truth, they seek control. And when they can't control the outside world, they begin to control the inner world. Your desires, your thoughts, your freedom. But the moral controller is not the only one led by unconscious forces. There is another figure, more volatile, more unstable, more chaotic, the complexed. Where the moralist represses and projects, the complexed individual is possessed. They are ruled not by control, but by disorder. They do not repress their shadow. They are overwhelmed by it. In the next part, we enter explosive psychological territory, where consciousness loses its grip and old wounds take the wheel of the psyche. Imagine living with someone who is, at times, sweet, affectionate, generous, and at others cold, angry, or accusatory without warning. A compliment becomes a demand. A joke is taken as an insult. A gesture of affection is interpreted as a threat. No matter what you do, you're walking on shifting ground. You're never quite safe. This is what it's like to live beside someone dominated by unconscious complexes. For Jung, complexes are autonomous clusters of emotion and memory buried in the unconscious. They are like psychic fragments, mini personalities created by trauma, psychic wounds, or unresolved past experiences. As described in Psychological Types and the Ego and the Unconscious, Jung showed that these complexes can hijack our behavior. We think we are reacting to the present moment, but in reality, we are reliving the past. A single comment can trigger an old wound, abandonment, humiliation, betrayal, and suddenly, the person in front of us becomes the target of our unresolved pain. The complexed individual doesn't realize this. To them, their reaction feels justified, rational, but it is not. It is emotional time travel. And the danger lies in the intermittency. The outbursts don't happen all the time. They are sporadic, emotional storms punctuated by moments of calm, even affection. This cycle makes the relationship addictive. You think, they're not always like this. And they're not. Sometimes they're beautiful, open, loving, and that's exactly what keeps you entangled. Because after the rupture, there's a moment of light, and you start chasing that moment. In your desire to restore peace, you mold yourself, you adapt, you shrink. You begin to measure your words. Certain topics are off limits. You walk on eggshells, not to disturb the person in front of you, but to avoid waking the monster that sleeps within them. But here is the brutal truth. That monster is not awakened by you. It is always there. Latent, hungry, waiting for a trigger, and when it emerges, it consumes everything. For Jung, unrecognized complexes colonize the psyche. They speak for you, feel for you, act for you. And for the complexed individual, this psychic hijacking happens often. They may be ruled by a complex of inferiority, martyrdom, abandonment, persecution, each one carrying its own script, its own emotions, its own compulsions. And the more you try to keep the peace, the more you feed the illusion that peace is even possible. Being close to someone like this means living in constant alert. There is no emotional stability. The present is never just the present. It is haunted by ghosts. And sooner or later you absorb them. You begin to doubt yourself, your memory, your intentions, your worth. Without realizing it, you too are being colonized by their unconscious. But this is not the most dangerous part. Because while the complexed person oscillates between emotional extremes, rage and remorse, affection and withdrawal, there is another type of person who does not shout, does not explode, does not accuse. They simply drain you. In the next and final section, we meet the most subtle form of psychic erosion. The psychic vampire, the one who feeds not on your presence but on your energy. Some people don't want you. They want your attention, your availability, your empathy, your life force, and they will drain it, not with violence but with subtlety, chronic victimhood. Emotional dependency camouflaged as affection. This is the psychic vampire, the most silent and insidious form of emotional erosion Jung ever warned us about. Even if he didn't use that name in Jungian terms, this is the unresolved symbiotic bond. A pathological connection that suffocates growth and dissolves the boundaries of the self. In The Ego and the Unconscious and Ion, Jung writes of how dangerous such relationships are to individuation. The journey towards psychic wholeness. In a symbiotic relationship, there is no I and you, only entanglement. You become extensions of one another, and the psychic vampire thrives in that space. They need your constant presence, your comfort, your reassurance. But behind this neediness is a void that does not belong to you, and that you will never be able to fill. You start by offering support, then time, then forgiveness, even for abuse, all in the name of empathy, until one day you realize you don't know where they end and you begin. The exhaustion is not just physical, it is existential. It feels as if your soul is being devoured, drop by drop, day after day. Jung wrote of people who, unable to carry their own psychic weight, attach themselves to others. Not to love them, but to survive through them. And as cruel as it may sound, this is the truth. The psychic vampire does not want to grow. They want to be carried. The greatest danger is not just the energy loss. It is the dissolution of yourself. You start to feel guilty for needing space, selfish for wanting solitude, cold for setting a boundary, because the psychic vampire is a master of inversion. They shift from victim to accuser, from helpless to manipulator. And suddenly, you are living to avoid conflict, to maintain harmony, to protect a bond that is slowly killing you. But there is a way out. Jung's work was always a path, from unconsciousness to consciousness, from bondage to freedom. This path applies not just to others, but to yourself. Because maybe at some point in your life, you have been a psychic vampire, or the complexed, or the moralist, or the persona bearer. None of us are immune. We all have a shadow. We all have wounds. The difference lies in one thing. Who has the courage to look within, and who chooses to project that pain outward? This video was a mirror, a dive into the psychic dynamics that bind us, hurt us, keep us unconscious. If you've made it this far, it means you're ready to see, to name, to break free. This is the first and most powerful kind of freedom. Not freedom from others, but from unconscious bondage. It's not about blame. It's about reclaiming sovereignty over your psyche. Now I invite you to participate. Which of these types have you encountered, and which honestly do you recognize in yourself? Have you ever wished to be someone who is unshakable? Someone who doesn't care about rejection, criticism, betrayal, or loss? Have you ever dreamed of the day when you will finally not feel that silent pain, that distress that eats you up inside even when you pretend to be fine on the outside? Maybe you're tired of always trying to be strong. tired of constantly holding yourself together while secretly wishing you could just breathe, without the pressure of being okay all the time. If that sounds like you, let me offer something that might be hard to hear, but necessary. As long as you keep avoiding pain, it's going to keep controlling you. The more you try to numb it, avoid it, hide from it, or protect yourself from feeling it, the more power it has over your life. Over your thoughts, over how you see the world and yourself. And no, that's not weakness. That's being human. Most people just get better at pretending. Carl Jung, one of the greatest thinkers in psychology, said something powerful. I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. And that's where the shift begins. It's not about becoming cold or indifferent. It's not about building walls or shutting yourself off. It's about integration, about gently bringing into the light all the parts of you that hurt in the dark. Because real strength isn't pretending you're not bleeding. It's knowing you are, and choosing to heal anyway. If you've made it this far, it's not an accident. This is for you, the one who feels like you're always carrying too much. The one who feels like you're always giving people the power to hurt you without even knowing how it happens. I want you to know something important. It doesn't have to stay this way, but it will require honesty. And that honesty might sting a little. But this kind of pain, it's the kind that can finally set you free. Let's begin with this truth. You think what hurts you is out there, someone's words, their rejection, the betrayal, the silence. But the hard truth is, it's not what people do that hurts you. It's what those things wake up inside you. It's the old wound that's still open, the unhealed story you keep replaying, the hidden shame or fear that you've never looked at head on. You see, what stings so deeply isn't always the moment. It's the memory it echoes. That's why someone else can hear the same thing and shrug it off while you spiral. It's not just about what happened, it's about where it hit you. And here's something even harder to accept. You might still be suffering because deep down, you're trying to control how the world treats you. You're still trying to be enough, smart enough, kind enough, strong enough to avoid getting hurt. But control, it's a trap. And the longer you cling to it, the more anxious, tense, and exhausted you'll feel. If you really want to stop hurting, stop trying to protect yourself from every possible hurt. What you need isn't more defense, it's more awareness. As long as your peace depends on other people changing, you'll always be at their mercy. But the second you realize that nothing can touch you unless it finds something unhealed inside you, that's when your freedom starts. Because the real battleground, it's inside, in the unconscious, the parts of yourself you haven't met yet. The ones you've ignored, the ones you judge, the ones that end up calling the shots anyway. Jung said it clearly. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. That anger you don't understand, that sadness that hits out of nowhere, those destructive choices you keep making, they aren't random, they're signals from the parts of you still waiting to be heard. The truth is, the more you ignore your inner wounds, the louder they'll scream. They'll show up in the same kind of relationships, in the same mistakes, in anxiety that never quite goes away, even when life looks good on the outside. And this isn't bad luck. It's your soul trying to wake you up. So what now? If you want to stop being hurt so easily, stop running from yourself. Because until you face what's inside, you'll keep being at the mercy of what's outside. The path isn't about building stronger walls. It's about tearing down the ones that keep you from seeing yourself. That's what integration means. And that is how you become truly strong. Not untouchable because you don't feel, but unshaken because you know yourself. Here's the truth most people don't talk about. We think that protecting ourselves means feeling less. So we build defenses, put on masks, tell ourselves we don't care anymore. But you can't numb pain without also numbing joy, connection, peace. Real emotional strength doesn't come from ignoring how you feel. It comes from understanding it, from knowing why you react the way you do, from finally being honest with yourself. As Jung put it, know all the theories, master all the techniques, but when you touch a human soul, be just another human soul. And maybe it's time you did that for yourself. Maybe it's time to stop being the version of you that never breaks, and start being the version of you that finally heals, because you don't become unshakable by becoming harder. You become unshakable by becoming whole. You become untouchable when you stop running from yourself. When you accept all parts of who you are, your fears, insecurities, flaws, you stop reacting to everything around you. You make conscious choices. You're no longer controlled by your emotions. That's real freedom. Carl Jung called this process individuation, becoming your true self, not the version of you others want. Not who you thought you had to be loved, but the real you. That comes from the mix of your light and dark sides. Jung said individuation isn't about becoming perfect, it's about becoming whole. You don't have to be better. You just need to stop rejecting parts of yourself. Here's the truth. The more you avoid pain, the more it controls you. The more you try not to feel, the more sensitive you actually become. But when you face your wounds and accept all of who you are, good and bad, then nothing outside of you can break you. This path isn't easy. It takes courage to look inside, to stop pretending, to really feel. But that's where your strength is hiding. In the pain. That's what we'll explore next. Let's go deeper, without fear. Since childhood, you were taught to hate pain, to see it as weakness, to believe that crying is useless and feeling too much makes you fragile, so you started avoiding, hiding, denying. But the more you run from pain, the more it follows you. Worse, it changes form. It becomes anxiety, anger, numbness, boredom, or habits that harm you, and you don't even know why. Pain doesn't go away when ignored, it just builds up until one day you break. Jung saw pain differently. To him, pain was the voice of your soul, your inner self asking for your attention. He said depression is like a visitor in black. Don't chase her away, invite her in. Listen, but we usually don't listen. We distract ourselves, stay busy, numb out, and avoid what really matters. So ask yourself, what is this pain trying to show me? Pain hurts most when you're fighting with yourself. Part of you wants to grow, another part resists change. That inner conflict is where suffering comes from. Change hurts. Growth hurts. Letting go of old beliefs and toxic relationships is painful. But that pain is part of something bigger, a process of dying to your old self so something new can be born. In your lowest moments, you see the real you, without masks or pretending. That's when pain becomes sacred, because it leads you to yourself. Jung understood, suffering isn't failure, it's part of the journey. Pain isn't the end, it's the beginning of becoming who you really are. Most people never cross that dark inner valley. They stop, they go back to distraction. But not you. You've come this far, which means you're ready to continue. Now it gets deeper. Very few people start the journey of individuation. Even fewer finish it. That's because this path doesn't give you comfort, safety, or praise. It challenges your ego. It breaks it down. Becoming who you really are means letting go of who you thought you were. And that's painful, because you realize a lot of what defined you was never truly you. You're not your achievements, not your traumas, not the image you built to be accepted. That was all survival. But real life begins after survival. In individuation, your unconscious starts pushing hidden parts of you to the surface. You'll need to let go of the persona, the fake self you created to fit in. It feels like tearing off your own skin. But underneath, the real you is waiting. That's when you become truly untouchable. Not because life stops affecting you, but because you've faced your inner demons. You've looked at your shame, your fears, and said, I see you, and you don't control me anymore. This gives you strength that doesn't depend on anyone's approval. You no longer need to be liked, win arguments, or look strong, because you know who you are. True emotional strength doesn't come from hiding. It comes from integrating all your parts. From staying grounded even when life shakes you. You may feel pain, but it doesn't break you. You may be hurt, but you don't lose yourself. You've stopped reacting. You've become whole. But there's a cost, loneliness. Not because you're truly alone, but because not many people are on this path. Most stay on the surface, afraid to feel deeply. And so you drift apart, not out of pride, but because you've outgrown your hiding places. This is where we reach the final truth. Clarity is your shield. Now let's finish this journey. Here's what you need to understand. Nothing outside of you will stop hurting until you understand what's going on inside of you. Words will still hurt. Rejections will sting. Losses will shake you until you wake up. Awakening isn't magic. It's a choice you make every day. A choice to look inside, even when it's painful. A choice to take responsibility for your feelings, without blaming others, your past, or life itself. Jung said, what you resist persists. What you accept transforms. You've spent your life resisting. The fear of not being enough, the pain of being rejected, the loneliness, the feeling of being invisible. So you hid, you shut down, you tried to control everything, you tried to be perfect and strong. And now you're tired. But here's what you've learned. Real emotional strength isn't about being hard, it's about being clear. It's not about building walls, it's about seeing yourself clearly. Because when you understand your pain, your patterns, your triggers, other people's actions can't destroy you. You still feel, but you don't fall apart, and that changes everything. What protects you isn't avoiding life, it's embracing it fully. People who live on the surface get knocked down by every wave, but those who dive deep find peace, strength, and stillness below. That's where you're headed, and once you start living from that place of truth, no one can shake you. The world might try, but it won't find a weak spot. If any of this resonated with you, if something inside you woke up, say it clearly. I choose awareness. Let's start a movement of people who no longer want to pretend to be strong, but want to live with truth. And remember, this is just the beginning. Real transformation happens when you keep going. See you in the next step.